Then Youngman lifted his foot high and, with all his might, bam! He smashed the musclehead's head. The system notified Youngman that he had killed the zone leader. So now he became the new zone leader with the authority skill. Now, seeing Youngman all covered in the musclehead's blood, he shouted in excitement, saying he is the king of this zone now. Then, Youngman started to laugh mischievously, and the first thing he thought was that now that he had the authority skill, he could control Aaron and do whatever he wanted with her body. Youngman, while looking at the dead, lifeless body of the musclehead, said that he would use the authority skill very well, and now the musclehead could rest in peace. Youngman turned back with a proud face and walked toward his friends. He told them that he had promised to kill that piece of shit, and his friends hesitantly replied that they were happy for him. However, deep inside, they were a little scared because Youngman was getting more psycho and perverted day by day. As they saw the musclehead's blood dripping from Youngman's hands, they became even more terrified. Youngman had killed someone barehanded, without any weapon. Now, the other players also started gossiping, realizing that Youngman was indeed the biggest piece of shit in the entire universe. His goal was to kill the musclehead from the start, which is why he had joined the musclehead's team. And now that someone like him had become the zone leader, all the players were getting very angry. They said they had to kill him because leaving someone like him alive would decrease their own chances of survival. But Youngman, for some reason, was not scared at all. He was just laughing with an arrogant smile. Seeing his arrogant smile, all the players prepared to attack Youngman. Then, Youngman suddenly, still with a confident smile, started running somewhere, shocking everyone. And guess what? He went running toward Ryu, shouting his name, and hurriedly asked Ryu if he saw how he killed the musclehead. And now he became the zone leader, and he even had the authority skill. Then Ryu asked, "So what?" Youngman, tapping his chest confidently, asked Ryu if he had made an offer to protect the musclehead because of his authority skill. He explained that he had the authority skill and then promised Ryu that he would do whatever Ryu asked. If needed, he could even wipe Ryu's ass if necessary. Then, Youngman, after saying this, was just very happy, thinking Ryu would accept his offer because he had the authority skill. But Ryu, with an annoyed face, replied that he didn't like Youngman's attitude, which startled Youngman. Ryu continued, saying that if Youngman got on his knees and begged, then Ryu could think about it. Now, hearing this, Youngman got confused and in a state of confusion asked Ryu if he heard what he just said, that he had the authority skill and could use it 10 times. Ryu replied, saying he knew, but Youngman must be misunderstanding something, as the one who was in a dire situation was Youngman, not Ryu. If Ryu really needed the authority skill, did Youngman really think he couldn't get it by killing him? Then Ryu, with a kind smile, explained that he just wanted to protect the musclehead because he was a piece of shit, and he wanted to tease and humiliate him in front of everyone in place of protection. Youngman, being even more of a piece of shit, needed to earn Ryu's protection, so he should get on his knees and bark like a dog 2 times now. As Youngman turned back, he saw all the players glaring at him like hungry dogs ready to devour him. Realizing the dire situation he was in, Youngman turned toward Ryu, and after taking a deep breath, he bowed down in front of Ryu, saying he was Ryu's slave and barked like a dog. "Ruff! Ruff! Ruff!" Then Ryu just stared at him as he barked like a dog for a while with a satisfying look, thinking that he really didn't care about the musclehead. But unlike the musclehead, Youngman did have some value, and he had future plans for him. But before that, he wanted to bully him to his heart's satisfaction. And after begging like a dog, Ryu finally accepted Youngman to come under him. Hearing this, Youngman started bowing heavily with a surprised face, thanking Ryu continuously. Seeing this, Ryu, with an annoyed and disgusted look, said that if Youngman ever even thinks of betraying him like what he did to the musclehead, he will chop Youngman into small pieces and feed it to dogs. With that, Ryu, with a majestic aura, started walking toward the players, leaving them in a state of confusion, wondering what was happening and whether Ryu would really protect Youngman. Some foolish individuals even contemplated attacking Ryu and Youngman together. However, one wise person panicked, warning others not to even think about attacking Ryu. He recounted how Ryu had slaughtered 100 goblins at once and emphasized that they couldn't possibly challenge such a formidable opponent. Before the wise man could finish his sentence, Ryu spoke loudly, asking if some of them wanted to attack him. This sent shivers down their spines, and Ryu continued with a serious expression, presenting them with 2 options. First, they could go and kill goblins to reach the top 25% and survive this round. Then, with great force, he pointed his black scythe toward the players, and with a deadly stare, announced that they could choose to die. and he wouldn't mind. He even jokingly mentioned that it would give him a good warm-up before the next wave of goblins arrived. After hearing Ryu's command, all the players immediately hid their weapons and panicked in a state of fear. They started running away from Ryu as if their lives depended on it. Meanwhile, Youngman was simply amazed. He couldn't help but marvel at how just a single word from Ryu could send all the players into a state of terror, causing them to flee like frightened rats. Youngman started laughing and gave Ryu a knowing look, realizing that when he used to be Ryu's enemy, he had also witnessed just how terrifying Ryu could be. Now, he felt safe with Ryu on his side. As Ryu observed the players battling the Wolfmen, he couldn't help but smile to himself. He thought that now that he had everything he wanted, he could finally begin his grand plan. Ryu called Youngman over, and Youngman happily approached him, addressing him as Sir. Ryu spoke in a deep voice and made a serious request. He asked Youngman to use all his 10 authorities to break the purple relic that all the players were protecting. Youngman was shocked by this command. He remembered that the angel had instructed them to protect the relic at all costs, and failure to do so would result in a heavy penalty. Youngman was frustrated and puzzled, wondering why Ryu was ordering him to break the relic. Using all his 10 authorities would also mean he couldn't control Arin and engage in any lewd activities with her. Youngman hesitated, scratching his head, as he asked Ryu why he had to break the relic. Ryu's response was stern, telling Youngman to shut up and obey his orders. Youngman then made a request, asking if he could please use only 9 of his authorities and save 1, as he had other plans for it. But Ryu replied in a cold tone, making it clear that he wouldn't repeat himself and that Youngman had to do as he was told to if he don't want to die. With a sad expression, Youngman agreed and assured Ryu that he understood. Then Ryu dropped yet another bombshell, revealing that he would now dictate whom Youngman had to use the authority skill on. As Ryu began reciting the names, Youngman realized that these were all the names of his friends. He couldn't help but wonder why all of his friends were on the list of people he had to use his command skill on. Youngman apologized to his friends, explaining that he couldn't deny Ryu's command. He used his authority skill, uttering his friends' names one by one. A strange purple symbol appeared on the heads of his friends, and they started to get mind-controlled. With the final command, break the relic, they succumbed to the mind control. Suddenly, a system notification appeared in front of all the players, stating that the relic was being attacked. Shocked and panicked, the players turned toward the relic and saw 10 people breaking it. In a state of panic, they rushed toward them to stop the destruction. Some players managed to trap a few of the culprits, while others were killed in the chaos. However, before the players could take further action, a crack formed in the crystal, and with a resounding crash it shattered into small pieces. A massive system window appeared, announcing that the relic had been broken and that they had failed the main quest. As a penalty, the agent of divine punishment would be summoned, attempting to kill everyone for 30 minutes. After that, the round would be over. A sense of horror and panic enveloped the area as players grappled with the gravity of the situation. They questioned who this divine punisher was and what they should do next. Meanwhile, Ryu stood holding his black scythe with a slight smile, confident that everything was going according to his plan. A system window appeared in front of everyone, announcing that a sub-quest would begin, and upon completing it, all players would receive 3,000 gold. As players contemplated this offer, they realized that getting 3,000 gold for surviving the 30-minute punishment was a better deal than the 2,000 gold they were receiving for protecting the relic. This realization led to some optimism among the players. However, Ryu noticed the naive players getting happy and started thinking that the larger reward indicated a more significant threat was coming to attack them. He also considered the reason he didn't break the relic himself, but before he could finish his thoughts, a big system notification appeared in the sky, stating that the 10 players who attacked the relic would receive a substantial penalty, which was a 50% reduction in all stats for those players. Hearing this, Youngman's friends were left speechless. Some felt depressed, while others were angry, and they started cursing Youngman, blaming him for their predicament. Youngman could only reply with a simple sorry, as he didn't know about this penalty. However, deep down, he felt a little relieved as nothing penalty had been applied to him. But before he could finish processing this information, a system notification appeared in front of him, stating that since the zone leader couldn't protect the relic from being destroyed, the zone leader's stats would also be permanently decreased by 50%. At first, Youngman took his time to comprehend this information, but when he realized what had just happened, he exploded in anger. He began kicking objects nearby, and his friends cursed him while he vented his frustration. Meanwhile, Ryu enjoyed this scene, as he had planned all along to make Youngmin's life a living hell, just as Ryu had experienced himself. Without wasting any time, Ryu opened the system shop and purchased an assassin hoodie and boots with the rest of his remaining gold, which slightly increased his movement speed. Then Ryu opened his combination window, a feature he had gained after reaching level 20, where he could fuse crystals into his equipment to gain bonus stats and abilities. He began the process by placing the skeleton necklace into the combination window and combined it with a mana stone. The system notified Ryu that the combination was successful, and all his stats increased by 1. Ryu repeated this process for all his mana stones, which he had obtained after killing the goblins, enhancing all of his equipment. As Ryu finished preparing himself, a chilling wind suddenly swept through the area, causing panic among all the players. Youngmin and his crew were even more panicked, as their stats had already been decreased by 50%. In contrast, Ryu remained calm and collected, awaiting the arrival of the Divine Punisher. He knew that even for the Divine Punisher, it wouldn't be easy to defeat him. In his previous life, there had been a time when they had failed to protect the relic, and only 500 players had barely survived by fleeing from the Divine Punisher. However, Ryu wasn't here just for himself. He was on a mission to make every holy being into holy shit, and the Divine Punisher was next in line. Suddenly, with a crackling sound, a large crack formed in the sky, and from that crack, an angel with big bright wings wearing a hoodie and holding a large golden staff with a chilling aura appeared. The Divine Punisher slowly descended to the ground, raising his wand up into the sky. Under his hoodie, 2 creepy eyes stared at the players as he asked, "Any last words?" With that, he tapped his staff onto the ground, and the entire ground started shaking. All the players were hit by a tremendous pressure and could barely stand, while Ryu gazed at the Divine Punisher like an ice cream ready to be licked. Now, a new quest has been issued, and everyone has to survive or dodge the attacks of the Divine Punisher for 30 minutes. The Divine Punisher slowly descended to the ground, raising his wand up into the sky. Under his hoodie, 2 creepy eyes stared at the players as he asked, "Any last words?" With that, he tapped his staff onto the ground, and the entire ground started shaking. All the players were hit by a tremendous pressure and could barely stand, while Ryu gazed at the Divine Punisher like an ice cream ready to be licked. Then, the purple energy wave slowly started to cover the entire area, and the system notified everyone that the agent of Divine Punisher had cast a restriction field. As the players tried to run from that area, the purple aura formed a barrier, restricting the players from going outside the area. The players started to panic and feel scared as they tried to break the barrier, but their efforts were in vain. So today's like goal is a little high. It's 6,900 likes. Please like and subscribe to support the channel. Thank you. Now let's continue. Another system notification appeared, hitting all the players with the news that the stats of those inside the barrier would be decreased by 50%. Ryu observed this from outside the barrier, realizing that 300 people were now trapped inside, and he couldn't break the barrier to save them. The Divine Punisher started to laugh, and with a flick of his wand, thousands of purple auras formed around him. Ryu, with a saddened expression, turned away from the 300 players and said, "So it has started." Just like that, the Divine Punisher launched his attack toward all 300 players inside the barrier. Each and every arrow found its mark mercilessly, despite the players' attempts to run, hide, or defend themselves. The arrows struck them down mercilessly. Then Ryu explained that under the Divine Punisher's domain, he could gain full control over the space and use his arrows just like his own body parts, ensuring that his arrows would hit the enemy no matter what. Suddenly, Ryu positioned himself at the edge of the barrier, stating that it wasn't a big deal for him since he had fought the Divine Punisher countless times before. Standing just behind the Divine Punisher, Ryu explained that now that he was positioned behind the Divine Punisher wouldn't be able to see him. The Divine Punisher lacked ears and could only sense everything within his barrier. With this advantage, as soon as the entire barrier lifted, Ryu, like a venomous snake, leaped high with deadly intent. He used his seal of death on the Divine Punisher, and before the Divine Punisher could react by turning back, Ryu thrust his black scythe into the Divine Punisher's right eye, popping it like a cherry. Golden blood splattered everywhere, and the Divine Punisher started to scream in pain. Ryu elegantly landed on the ground, and behind him the Divine Punisher was still screaming. In just one hit, Ryu had already drained 40% of the Divine Punisher's health. Then Ryu suddenly started running, and in anger, the Divine Punisher tapped his staff on the ground, initiating the formation of his domain expansion barrier. At this point, Ryu had already memorized each and every move of the Divine Punisher. So before the barrier could trap Ryu, he was already outside the barrier and standing behind the Divine Punisher in his blind spot. Ryu explained that as soon as the Divine Punisher saw that no one was trapped under his barrier, he would release it. During the release of the barrier, the Divine Punisher couldn't attack for 2 seconds, and Ryu only needed that 2 seconds. As soon as the barrier lifted, Ryu, with a dead serious look, dashed toward the Divine Punisher, jumped high, charged his black scythe, and in a swift slash, chopped the Divine Punisher's last eye like a cherry tomato. Golden juice splashed all around the place, and now the Divine Punisher was in immense pain. This was the first time in the last 500 years that anyone had even made a scratch on his body. He didn't even know how pain felt, and now both of his eyes were punctured. As Ryu slowly landed on the ground, the Divine Punisher was still crying in pain like a baby, in immense anger. Before Ryu could leave the Divine Punisher's domain, he casted his domain expansion barrier. Now, Ryu got trapped under the barrier, and all of Ryu's stats got dropped by 50%. Sensing Ryu was trapped under his barrier, the Divine Punisher started to laugh wobbly, saying that now he would kill Ryu by piercing thousands of arrows into Ryu's ears and every hole. But Ryu just stood there with a confident look and a slight smile, saying that without the Divine Punisher's eyes, he would no longer be able to land his lightning arrow on an enemy. He explained that first, he had to see his enemy and mark them, and only then would the attack automatically hit the enemy. Now, without his eyes, he was nothing more than a living waste. In his last cry, the Divine Punisher charged his ultimate attack. He summoned thousands of lightning spears, covering the entire barrier with them. But Ryu had had enough playing with the Punisher. In an instant he jumped, activated his black scythe, and had already activated the Seal of Death on the Divine Punisher. Thanks to his skeleton necklace and the title he gained from killing the Angel, his stats were now 7.5 times more potent, and with a single slash, Ryu chopped the Divine Punisher left wing. Then, the Divine Protector, still blind, tried to counterattack, but Ryu swiftly, using the staff of the Divine Punisher, jumped even higher into the sky, dodging the attack. Once again, with a swift slash, he chopped off the last wing of the Divine Punisher. As Ryu swiftly landed on the ground, the Divine Punisher was already in immense pain. With this, the Divine Punisher was left standing in silence, wondering what was happening. His job was supposed to be slaughtering players for 30 minutes, and torturing them as much as his heart desired. But this was out of script. Suddenly the Divine Punisher began to tremble and mutter something. Ryu immediately started running away from him. Now, the Divine Punisher was furious, and in a deep voice, he threatened Ryu, saying he didn't know who Ryu was, but now he would chop him into pieces and feed them to holy dogs. Ryu would not have a peaceful death. A system notification then informed everyone that the Divine Punisher had activated his passive skill. He would become invincible and all his stats would be doubled for 10 minutes. On the other hand, Ryu watched this from the side, realizing that this was why he had popped out the Divine Punisher's eyes. Before his death, the Divine Punisher became invincible, and when the Punisher was blind, he was just a punching bag, as he could only land his attacks by seeing his opponent. Then, with a loud scream, the Divine Punisher waved his staff, and multiple small purple portals appeared around him. Deadly light strikes started landing everywhere under the barrier at random places, trying to hit Ryu. However, Ryu, with all his stats multiplied by 7.5x, easily dodged all the attacks with a smile on his face. Finally, the time came as the Divine Punisher's invincibility wore off. Ryu immediately charged toward the Divine Punisher, and before the Punisher could even move an inch, Ryu chopped off the Punisher's head with a cold look. Golden blood started to splatter like a fountain, and Ryu stood there with a satisfying look on his face. The system notified Ryu that he had murdered the Divine Punisher and leveled up 3 times, gaining a total of 12,200 gold. Additionally, as Ryu was the first in history to kill a Divine Punisher, he earned the title, the one who opposes the divinity. Because of this title, when fighting any divine being, he would take 80% less damage from them. Now, Ryu was standing beside the Punisher, and he had finally made the Divine Punisher into a divine milkshake. But it wasn't the end. The system notified Ryu that an additional reward would be given, as he didn't even get a single scratch from the Divine Punisher's attacks. Just like that, 2 items appeared in Ryu's hand. The first item was the skill Radiance, and without wasting any time, Ryu clenched his fist, breaking the seal, and started to absorb the skill. The second reward was a condensed ether. Ryu explained that this was called condensed ether, and despite all the gold, skills, and level-ups he had gained, the main reason he defeated the Divine Punisher was for this item. It was an important material for crafting a divine-ranked item. Finally, he successfully absorbed the skill Radiance. With this skill, he now had a passive ability. Ryu's intelligence would increase by 1 with each level, and all his divine-type skills would receive a 1% boost with each level. This meant that as he was now level 30, he would automatically have 30 intelligence, and the same applied to his divine-type skills. Now the Punisher had been turned into a holy shit, and everyone was just standing there cheering and calling Ryu a monster. Some were even calling him their savior, as he had single-handedly slaughtered the Punisher like a vegetable. As the Punisher's body was disappearing, there was a jittering sound, and an angel appeared from behind, amazed by what she saw. She commented with a, "Wow, amazing." So with this, the episode ends here. Write part 10 inches in the comments. Thanks for watching.